for the record, I'd be curious to know, like, why Luca didn't go with the jeans so that he could be full on, I don't know. I mean, I dressed like Luca last week. I thought Bob would dress like Luca this week. So, I have a question for you all I want to start off with. I was curious, if I were to ask you, what does it mean to be a good listener? What would you say? If I were to say to you, what does it mean to be a good listener? What would you say?
I think it means where you're actually listening to the person and not thinking of what you're going to say.
Okay, so actually fully engaged. Yeah, I mean, I know that I have a huge problem with that. Like, I'll ask names, and I'm already thinking about the next question that I want to ask them, and then I have to ask them their name again later on. So yeah, being fully engaged, paying attention, not thinking ahead. Yeah, Greg.
Comprehending what the speaker's...
Comprehending. Yeah, and again, paying attention. Not being somewhere else. What else? Be a good listener. That's really hard, right? Because we want to share our own experiences. We want to fix them, right? Well, what I did when you're going through this, what else? Yeah.
Not letting your own preconceptions get in the way.
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. Not letting your preconceptions, not letting your judgments. That's a tough one. Setting that aside. Yeah.
Listen 80%, talk 20%.
80-20, yeah. Well, and what I like about that though is that it is important, I think, to have some conversation, because sometimes I'll try to do the whole silent thing, and it doesn't work out real well. And actually, being able to do active listening, so what I'm hearing you say is, did I get that right? So again, kind of repeating back some things sometimes, and again, remembering that, if I'm a listener, I'm going to be listening primarily. Anything else? I'm not looking for anything, I'm just curious. Yeah, Mike.
Being fully present.
Being fully present. Being there. Karen. So who do we normally tell that they need to be good listeners? Kids. 98% of the time. How many of you have ever said the phrase, are you being a good listener right now? Yeah, raise your hand. And all the wives say yes. All right. I was curious, though, as I was thinking through this week, when and why do you think we stop telling people to be good listeners? Think about it, all right? Seriously, we lift up listening from kindergarten up till maybe what, 5th grade? And then we start emphasizing and rewarding the best public speakers, right? And the kid that always has their hand up. And the one who can argue their point the best. I mean, you think about it, we have public speaking classes, right? Do we have any public listening classes? What if we did? I bring this all up in the light of the gospel lesson for this morning from Mark. Did you know that in all of the New Testament, 27 books, God the Creator is only said to speak audibly twice? Once at Jesus' baptism, and again here at Jesus' transfiguration. 27 books, 2 times. Maybe we should pay attention. What does God say to Peter, James, John, and all of us this morning? You're allowed to cheat. Listen to him. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. God, the Almighty Creator of the universe's only directive to humanity and all of the New Testament is listen. We are called to be good listeners of Jesus. Now, for the hard part, what on earth does that mean? What does that look like to be a good listener of Jesus? I had the uncomfortable opportunity to reflect on this commandment while I was on the first part of my trip to the Holy Land. I talked a little bit about this last week when the first 4 days we were over in Jordan, and we were meeting with and working with refugees. And I didn't really know what to expect when I headed over there. The guy who was my contact seemed to have the opinion that less is more. Sort of, show up, I'll be there, it'll be good. And so my contact, his name is Elias, and strangely enough, that means Elijah from our reading this morning. But he had bumped into two Americans that he had worked with about 10 years ago in Bethlehem, and they were on a trip doing work with refugees. And so they said, well, why don't we join up together and work together? Seems like a good idea, right? And I thought that we were going to be delivering food and winter clothes and listening to stories, basically. I thought that was my gig. And I found out that they had a little different plan, and we were taking food, but we were also taking along with us these little iPod things that played the Bible, in both Arabic and also in English. And then we were supposed to tell these people about the gospel. I'm a Lutheran. I was like, all right, that's a little out of my comfort zone, but good. I can do this. The E in the ELCA stands for evangelical, right? Good news telling, gospel telling. And yet, when I got into these houses, these tiny houses, all right, with no insulation, no heat. The first house we walk into was just choked with smoke. The only source of heat that they had was a kerosene heater in one of the rooms, and they had everything closed in to keep the heat in, which, I'm assuming that's not real good for you, but that's... And they start telling stories of tragedy and immense suffering that their families have endured to get some semblance of safety. One family had been refugees for 19 years, trying to get to a permanent place. Another told stories of fleeing from soldiers that were trying to kill them for 15 hours straight they ran. And the people I was with, we'd get to a point and then they'd be like, all right, now I'm going to tell you about Jesus. And I felt weird about it. Something just didn't feel right. And I couldn't put my finger on it until the third and final house that we stepped into. It was an older couple. He was on dialysis and desperate to find a way to get to the clinic for his treatments. His wife, the woman, had just run out of her blood pressure medicine and was suffering from awful headaches as a result. She was having us take pictures of her medicine to see if we could find more. And yet, and in spite of all this, there were 2 bowls of food, hot and ready, on the table. There was a bowl of what tasted a lot like Lipton noodles, and another that looked like mashed potatoes and gravy. What it actually was it was water and flour mixed together into basically paste. And there was a little bit of it was a fish gravy that you were supposed to dip the paste into. And this was all they had. And this is what they wanted to share with us. In listening to this woman and man's story, I realized something. The group I was with was seeking to bring people to Christ. And yet I was finding that Jesus was already there, ahead of us, in a simple meal shared with great love. Perhaps this is one of the messages and lessons that we can hear this morning. God is on the mountaintops. God is in the holy places. And yet God is no less in the valleys and in the ordinary and the everyday. Christ goes before us. We can never contain nor limit God's presence or love. Perhaps in those dark places where we desperately want to bring Christ's life, light, and love, we are called to listen rather than to speak, to see how Christ is already present, to see how Christ is seeking to reveal himself and bring light, life, and love into our lives. Who will you have the opportunity to listen to this week? Who will reveal Christ to us in spectacularly ordinary ways? I'd love to hear about it. Call me, email me, set up a meeting. Thanks be to God, and amen.